Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome from Washington, D.C. My name is Ava Dessau, and I am an Associate Program Manager with the Washington, D.C. office of the Mississippi Consortium for International Development, also known as MCID Washington. I am working from home, wearing a white spotted blouse. I have tan skin, black curly hair, and brown eyes. MCID Washington is one of the nonprofit organizations that helps implement the U.S. Department of State's International Visitor Leadership Program, or IVLP. We have designed and implemented IVLP projects for over 20 years, and we are committed to developing meaningful connections and greater understanding throughout the world. We are very grateful for our lasting partnership with the U.S. Department of State, and we are honored to present ADA Impact on the Global Community, featuring our IVLP alumna and Gold Star, Ms. Myeon Kim. Before we hear from our Gold Star alumna, I wanted to introduce a very special guest from the U.S. Department of State, who is a tremendous supporter of the International Visitor Leadership Program and our Global Ties U.S. network. Anne Grimes is the director of the Office of International Visitors. She is a career member of the Senior Foreign Service with 3 decades of experience. Originally from Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, Anne has served in Washington, D.C., as well as in overseas missions in Madagascar, Indonesia, Burkina Faso, China, and India. Welcome, Anne. I will turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm delighted to be with you here today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. I am working from home in my husband's music room, but I have a virtual background with the IVLP logo tonight. I have short blonde hair, and I'm wearing a bright pink blazer over a black sweater. The State Department's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs and the Office of International Visitors are truly honored to partner with the Global Ties U.S. network in hosting our IVLP Gold Stars. The Gold Star Initiative has recognized over 50 extraordinary International Visitor Leadership Program alumni in the past 10 years. Typically, Gold Star alumni return to the United States to reconnect with U.S. counterparts that they met during their original IVLP. But due to the pandemic, we are running our programs as virtual exchanges. In fact, 3 Gold Stars last summer helped us pilot our virtual exchange model from their homes and offices in Nigeria, Lebanon, and India. Over the past few weeks, we implemented new virtual exchanges with additional Gold Stars from Ukraine and Chile. Please check out the recordings from those presentations shared on YouTube by our program partners. In a typical year, the IVLP brings over 5,000 current and emerging leaders to the United States, joining a group of over 225,000 alumni. This past year, 2020, marked the 80th anniversary of the IVLP, giving us the opportunity to honor and celebrate notable alumni who have participated on the program. I encourage you to check out our Faces of Exchange campaign at eca.state.gov/Faces of Exchange and at State IVLP social media. The IVLP is as important today as ever, and we are proud to have pivoted to a virtual model to continue our engagement with emerging leaders around the world. And I'm proud to say that in 2020, despite the daunting challenge of the pandemic, we were able to reach over 3,200 participants through 239 projects and alumni activities, the majority of those virtual. I've met many IVLP alumni over the years, and I can tell you that our embassy colleagues really enjoy connecting with such a dynamic group of professionals and hearing about their exchange experiences. We continue to rely on our strong partnership with the Global Ties U.S. network, working with 8 national program agencies and over 80 community-based members across the United States to administer IVLP projects. Through their efforts, emerging foreign leaders from a variety of professional fields can learn about the United States and cultivate lasting relationships with U.S. contacts. Today's Gold Star program also gives us an important opportunity to mark the recent 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, commonly referred to as the ADA. The ADA is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life in the United States. The Americans with Disabilities Act is a life-changing landmark legislation protecting the civil rights of people with disabilities. The ADA succeeded in eliminating many barriers in employment, education, transportation, government services, and telecommunications, all aspects of public life in the United States. To our Gold Star alumna, Mi-Yoon Kim, congratulations on your extraordinary and passionate work in support of disability rights and social inclusion in South Korea and around the world. Thank you for sharing your accomplishments and the impact of the IVLP on your work since returning home. I would also like to recognize the outstanding contributions of our host today at MCID Washington. Thank you, Crystal Kelch, for your outstanding leadership in support of the IVLP, and Ava Dessaw, Isabella Parota, and Danielle Fallon for making Mi-Yoon's virtual return visit to the United States and this presentation extra special. Our partners at the International Visitors Council of Los Angeles and Global Ties San Francisco also played important roles in Mi-Yoon's virtual exchange program. All of you are such dedicated partners of the IVLP, and we are grateful for your support over many decades. And to our guests, thank you for joining today's important discussion about access for all and advocacy in support of inclusion and civil rights. Your work is truly making this world a better place for all. As we continue to celebrate the ADA, we also continue to expand the IVLP's focus on disability rights in collaboration with partners through the Global Ties US network. In fact, since 2010, we have implemented 120 IVLP projects for more than 800 international visitors on themes related to disability rights and social inclusion. Nevertheless, there is still more work to be done at home and abroad, and in communities such as Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and San Francisco. We are able to share insights and experiences with international visitors like Mi-Yoon, who return home to impact the world in new and exciting ways. Thank you again to our hosts and speakers for organizing this wonderful event. To our guests across the United States and around the globe, thank you for joining this discussion. And now I'm turning it back over to our friends at MCID Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. And now it is my honor to introduce our distinguished speaker, IVLP Gold Star, Ms. Mi-Yoon Kim. Ms. Kim is a woman with disabilities and a disability rights activist. After her IVLP program in 2013, she worked to arrange an international conference on disability rights in Seoul. In 2018, she was elected to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, known as the CRPD, where she works to address intersectional aspects of life with disability, particularly the experiences of women and girls. She has long advocated for the inclusion of gender perspectives in disability rights legislation, and she contributed to the development of the 2007 South Korean Disability Discrimination Act, as well as Article 6 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which specifically concerns the rights of women. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mi-Yoon. You may now begin your presentation.
So I will continue with my presentation. Today, I'm not participating as a member of the UNCRDP. I'm participating as the IVLP alumni and how ADA has affected the Korean situation and myself. First of all, I'd like to, before I start, how my relationship started with the American ADA leadership, I'd like to find out share my relationship with my ADA, because my relationship started with the woman leaders, ADA leaders in America. We are like you, we are women like you. And this was the slogan at the Beijing Women's Conference as a member of the disability rights activist. There were 200 people who attended this conference in Beijing, and I was representing the women of Korea with disability, and this was the 4th conference in Beijing. And in the beginning, the rights of the disability in Korea was rather in the beginning phase, anticipated to share a Korean experience. And when I first attended the conference, "We are like you, we are a woman like you," was the slogan that we all shared. We were there to represent our experience and our history. We were invisible at the time. We were isolated. So we were there as a woman of disability, and we were there to share our experience and our reality. In this conference, when we got there, Judith Human and Susan Weigert was waiting for us. And so the relationship started with this American ADA leaders in Beijing's conference. And we voiced, in one voice, we were able to present who we were. That was the beginning of the networking that started with the worldwide and American ADA activists. Never turn back was our slogan. And then eventually we were invited to Washington, D.C., and then to Eugene, Oregon. And this was the place where 613 women activists were invited. And this program was called WILD, and this was attended by the disability rights activists from all over the world. And this time was as a result of dedication of somebody like Judith Human. And now we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of ADA, American Disability Act. And this was an enormous contribution on the part of the American government, and somebody like Judith Human has been working very hard as a person who can make decisions in this area. And the political power of somebody like Judith Human was tremendous in solidifying the power of the women's activists worldwide.
The Korean law on the prohibition of discrimination against the disability community is a unique law in Korea. I created this organization of women, and I know that without our voices, such changes cannot be made. However, my life did not end in Korea. 3 years later, history led us to the headquarters of the UN in New York. This was because the Ad Hoc Committee for Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which would change the world, began in the UN. However, There was no article for women with disabilities on the draft of the convention. The rights of PWD seemed to be only for men with disabilities, but not for women with disabilities. The WWD, whom I met in Beijing, Washington, D.C., and Eugene in the past, became leaders of international organizations of PWD. They were playing a key role at the core of the movement. We brought the WWD's issue up to the surface, urging to make the article for us in the convention through Korean government. I volunteered as a coordinator of the Women's Committee of the International Disability Caucus. For the past 30 years, women with disabilities were not included in the national women's policies. And that was because there was no mention of women with disabilities in the CEDAW. We have our own article, Article 6, and this is what we demanded, what we implored for. Many women of disability community worked together to make this possible and came together all across the world. In August 2006, we were able to see the Article 6 of CRPD, and gender was included in the article as well. Gender equality was mentioned in the article and was a landmark development. This became an international law that addressed the rights of women all over the world. This is the photo of the historical moment. This was one of the most moving moments of my life. Let us look at Article 6. The content I explained before is here on this slide. Multiple discrimination is mentioned very clearly in the slide. The words 182 countries ratified this article, and it is now effective legally. And the ratification of the UNCRPD also played a big role in this law. The Korean disability law CRPD and its ratification is a great change in society. And the CRPD, this article was ratified, but there were no lawsuits. And it was considered a law of welfare. The Disability Community of Korea during this time, my point of interest was human rights and understanding human rights through lawsuits and understanding the legal organizations behind them. And in 2010, I came together with colleagues volunteering in this area and created a meeting to research the laws behind these. The lawmakers involved in this area as well are involved in many various legal activities. The ADA is also the topic of a workshop in Korea, and many other public activities are something that we engage in to spread awareness of the law. In 2012, Ms. Judith Heumann, visited the Republic of Korea. In 1995, she and I met in Beijing, and she is a great mentor of mine. Through us, the United States and Korea began a relationship. In 2013, I participated in the IVLP, and I was able to meet all of you. Through the US State Department, I was chosen, and in 2013, I created a group of legal professionals in Korea and went over to Washington, D.C. to begin our program. The IVLP covered many areas. We were able to visit the Senate and the Library of Congress. And we were also able to meet with a key judge and key lawmakers, namely Mr. David Tatel and Mr. John Wadach. I was very moved by these legal professionals. We visited the U.S. Department of Labor Office Disability Employment Policy, which is working to ensure the rights of training the employers and making lawsuits against discrimination. It was very impressive to see the structure in which the Department of the federal government directly intervenes in the procedure of protecting civil rights. We were able to see the passionate disability rights movement firsthand in the United States. The IVLP did not end in 2013 with this one visit. We were able to invite Mr. John Wadach, the lawyer we met in the States, to Korea. And so we were able to learn the effects of the ADA through an exchange workshop that we set up. We also met with a deaf lawyer and lawmaker, very active in the field. In Korea, we do not have a deaf lawmaker yet, so it was very impressive to see and meet him. The young deaf community that we led were able to meet with this gentleman and The youth were very moved. Some of them were moved to pursue careers as lawyers. This is a promotional leaflet that describes my activities. I have been supported actively by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I've been engaging in many campaigns. I was chosen as a member of the CRPD of the UN. As a member of this committee, I have been able to live a new life of challenges. In 1995, which was when I met with Miss Judith Heumann, and the years thereafter, I met with leaders in the United States in various cities. The female leaders of the disability community were inspirational to me, and their direction has led to my current path. I have a dream. As a member of the CRPD, I work for the future of our daughters with disabilities so that they can live changed lives, to enjoy the rights and the fundamental freedoms that all humans should be able to have. My dream is to open up a world, a wide world for them. Never turning back is the catchphrase. Never going back to the lives that they had before. It has been a pleasure for me to share my experiences for the past 30 years. Thank you to the Department of State for choosing me as a Gold Star, and the UNCRPD has gained great support from this IVLP and from you. I want to emphasize that. As a member of the CRPD in the future, and for the improvement of rights, I promise you that I will cooperate with you on this mission. Thank you so much for listening.
So now moving into the Q&A segment of today's program. Please remember to submit your questions using the chat function at the bottom of your screen. You can also submit questions both in English and in Korean. We will also accept the raised hand function, and you are free to click that hand function if you want to submit a question or a comment. To raise or lower your hand using the keyboard shortcuts, please use Alt-Y in Windows or Option-Y on a Mac. As you submit your questions, please remember that this session is being recorded. So now to begin the Q&A segment, Mian, I would like to start it with my own question. Looking back at your original IVLP project in 2013, can you share with us which meetings or moments were the most meaningful to you at the time?
Sure. I mentioned about through IVLP, we visited various organizations, and the one that was most impressive was that one of our participants was, we had Judge Che, Honorable Che, who was visually impaired, and also one person who was speech impaired, and we met this one judge who has been a legal expert for 30 years as a hearing impaired, and we had this one Korean judge was waiting to be nominated. So the meeting that judge was the most momentous moment for us, and with the visually impaired, how he was able to act as a judge, and as a judge, what support that he demanded. And so this counterpart had a lot of questions. So this judge was very memorable for not just me, for all participants. So if we would like to invite him to Korea if opportunity is given. So if a Korean courthouse also supports visually impaired judges, so this courthouse can provide the rights for the visually impaired judges and the attorneys.
That is awesome. I hope that he's able to, at some point, attend a trip to South Korea and engage in that kind of exchange with you and your colleagues. I have a question in the chat box submitted by Victoria Meza. She says, I studied abroad at Korean University for 1 year a few years back, and I had a terrible fall where I sprained my ankle really bad. The area I lived in, Annam, has a lot of steep hills and slopes and uneven ground. So even with a sprained ankle, it was very hard to walk. I'm assuming this is a friend. My friend was kind enough to drive me to class to the front door of the building. I'd like to know if there is any work being done to improve infrastructure and make it easier for people with disabilities and injuries to get around in Korea.
Yes, in Korea, as a matter of fact, we have a convenience law for people with disabilities for accessibility, but for old buildings, they have this grace period. So for the Annam area near the Korea University where this student attended, the condition is very dire, unfortunately. So I'm sure that she had a very difficult time. But so I'm working with the activists who work for the disability rights, and we have this public interest movements, and so for the first floor they have also stairs, so it's very difficult for people with disabilities to go, even it's the first floor. So we're working very hard to have a very flat floors. So there is a class lawsuit, but that we are saying that the life with a flat surface, that could be a campaign, that could be the slogan for the general public. So with this litigation, maybe we can bring some change to our society. That's what we are working on.
Great. I think that there's another question that's been submitted by Tanisha Williams. Was there something that happened to you personally that motivated you to make these moves? Or was there some observation or observations that moved you to seek change?
Yes. I didn't have a chance to introduce myself. I had a polio when I was 11th month, so I'm a woman with disability, and I have a electric power wheelchair, and I cannot walk very well, and I cannot use my left hand, so I'm pretty much use just the one hand. So I'm severely disabled. When did I start this movement, disability rights? That's when I graduated from university. It was very difficult to enter a university when at the time, and when I entered university in 1985, and they announced the majors when they could not accommodate students with disability. So I was able to graduate still. So I was very confident about myself and my life. But after graduating from university, I could not get any jobs. So I realized that I'm real disability. The society is denying me. Then I have to change the word. So I was rather naive. That's when I started working on disability rights. And after I started working as an activist with disability rights, and there are times that, oh, maybe it's not for me, because as a woman, my identity was not accepted as a female with disabilities. So that is why I started that women with disability movement. So, and through the 1995's Beijing's Women's Conference, that was the turning point of my life. So, and then I shared my activities after that.
Great. That's a really good story. I know there's a lot of challenges with this and keeping your motivation up, but it's good to hear that you found a source of empowerment. So we have another question in the chat box. Somebody is telling us, Mian, thank you so much for your presentation and your continued leadership for disability rights, especially the rights of women and girls with disabilities. What do you feel has been the biggest contribution of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities since its adoption in 2006?
Is the question about the UN RDPC, the convention?
Yes, correct.
That convention that the president of Mexico, Fox, provide a draft in 2000. That's when it started. So in that draft, there was no mention of women with disabilities. So, and the government leaders created the working group. So all countries participated and prepared the draft. But in that draft, there was no mention of women with disabilities either. And there was no mention of gender equality. So during this time, that all these women with disabilities, they did not contact, but in the winter of 2002, I was in New York, and it was a very snowy winter, a record-breaking cold winter, and I went there, New York, and I was very surprised. And there were all these women with disabilities gathered in one place, and they all had the same reason. And the convention had no mention of women with disabilities. For the past 30 years, we were not considered, we were ignored. Yet, if we do not exist in this convention, then who's going to, which government, which country will protect us? We were all felt very desperation at that time. So these women with disabilities, we share the different culture and language and different conditions, situations and language. Yet, as women with disability, we unified our voice. We were able to unite our voice. So at that time, it was really difficult trip for me to make a trip to New York. So I met with Kwang Hee Kim. This lady, we just went there with my dear friend, and we had to voice our voice as women with disability. I mean, we met with, we had the discussion, heated discussion with the male with the disabilities, and at that time, we had the Article 15 BC, and it was between Article 15 and 16. And there's a 15B, there was a women with disability was recommended. So with this draft, with this women with disabilities gathered together, and we tried to make the language even stronger. And that's what gave me the motivation. And the reason that I attended the Beijing conference, when we gathered and together, we were working very hard to find our voice and to get our rights. So, and I volunteered as a coordinator, and as a coordinator, I went to Africa and Arab women's conference, and I made a speech there. I went to Europe, I went to Southeast Asia, and I traveled around the world. So we are making this convention and we need to raise our voice. I talked about this, women with disabilities. I said that you have to convince your government, and everybody agreed with me, and they all gave me courage. And that is the courage, that is the inspiration to me. It's not just my own power, it is the power of that all women with disability. I think that's what gave me the motivation, and that is why I'm proud to say I'm a woman with disabilities.
Thank you, Mian. I think that you also give other people courage from your motivation and from your willingness to work hard and try to unite people from all over the globe for this kind of purpose. Just one moment, let me just check our Zoom chat box to see what the next question is. Okay, so somebody has submitted into the chat box. Previously, you were discussing a little bit about employment in Korea. What is the condition of persons with disabilities to gain employment in Korea now?
So we have the office that is devoted for the employment of the disabled people, and also for the welfare approach is also there for the disability rights. And these days, the young people with the development disability, the environment for them is much more encouraging, using smartphone and other mobile devices. So there's a coffee shop for the young people with disabilities. So in Korea, we have employment policies also due to the disability rights. Any kind of discrimination against the disabled people is legally pursued. However, this is a very difficult homework for all of us in Korea, because there are people who find it difficult to work with people with disability, and also the understanding of the disability rights is increasing. And yet when there is a disabled person that one has to work with in the workplace, some of the there's a discrimination and misunderstanding that the workforce may not be as effective. Another thing that I'd like to share is the UNCRPD. There is a clause about the employment and labor, and there is a working group who have produced a draft related to employment. So if you go to my website, you will find the general comment about the labor and employment, and you can also submit your ideas and your suggestions, and this will be used as a guideline for that would affect the disability rights and their employment situation throughout the world.
That sounds like a great resource. I think that several people who are watching today will check that out after today. I think we have time for another question. There is someone who's asking, Mian, you are such a role model for women and girls in disability. If you could address them all in one place, what would you tell them to encourage them and give them hope?
Well, I'm very proud of being a woman of disability, because when you think about it, a woman of disability, we experience so many different things that other people, non-disabled person, will not understand. But as you look deeply into our lives and ourselves, we experience discrimination not only as a disabled person, but also as a woman. But we are changing the landscape as such. Also, I have emphasized the multiple disability in the article, and the reason is by being more visible, for the multiple disabled people to be more visible, and the Native Americans or Native people who are disabled, the refugees who are disabled. These are also the areas that show the multiple discrimination exists, and different government needs to look at this situation and overcome the difficulties that they face, thereby eliminating the difficult hardship that they are facing. So we exist, and we have the charisma as women, as a person of beauty, and people of creativity and power and beauty. So there are mentors all over the world, and I like to show who we are, and also our daughters who may be born with disability. I'd like to instill the pride to all these people, the daughters of our future. And I just dream the world where we are able to live with disability. We do not want the sympathy or empathy. We want to be the torch to make us visible, to make this discrimination visible. So during this very difficult COVID pandemic situation, I think we can share and show what we can do. And thank you very much for this time, for this webinar. And if you'd like to share more and have continued discussion, please send me your suggestion, your opinions through the email, and I'll be very happy to participate.
Yes, thank you, Neon. You put it in such a great way. I think I will always remember that women, or we as women, having beauty, charisma, and creativity. I think that I will always use that in my mind whenever I need some motivation. I think we have time for one last question for today. Somebody has submitted a question that is looking a little bit at your presentation. I know you discussed this a little bit, but as to the future, could you describe a little bit more about what your plans are, what your ambitions are?
Well, first of all, I am a member of the UN Persons of Disability Rights, and I am working very hard on it. My purpose is to talk about my purpose. I am actively participating in this cause, but since last year I have not been able to participate other than online. But the first year that I became a member in 2019, there are numerous countries that participated. And one of the things that really hurt me and disappointed me was the other governments. There are many governments who are not really actively pursuing this act. They would come and attend meetings, and they would say they will follow up, and yet that was not the case. More than anything else, this national report for the disabled woman and girls were very limited. And so I have come to realize this area is rather weak. But then I have a tendency to really become a combat mode when I face this situation. So there are disabled ladies, women who are experiencing multiple disabilities, refugees, and also natives of disabilities. There are many different levels of difficulties for these people. So I am really pushing for the government to come up with the policies to work with this group of people, and that is my determination. This year there will be an election for the president, and I am going to be nominated as a candidate representing the Asia Pacific area. So I would like to be more active once this election is over. Thank you very much for your interest. And I would like to also encourage to send all your suggestions and opinions to the headquarters. So please feel free to send any opinions and suggestions so that this could be reflected in our agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Myon. Thank you we truly appreciate you sharing your time, your observations, and your experiences with us. I vocalized many of the questions that were submitted into the chat, but throughout the questions, there were so many comments about how inspiring your life and your work is, and many people are touched by what you're doing. Thank you very much. We really appreciate spending this time with you today. I also want to thank our partners at the U.S. Department of State, Anne Grimes, and in Los Angeles and San Francisco for all of your support on developing this virtual IVLP Gold Star program. A huge thank you to the entire team of verbal interpreters and sign language interpreters and our live captioner. You've made this all possible and very accessible for our audience today. I also want to thank everyone who's watching in the audience. Thank you for spending time with us this evening or morning, depending on where you are. Your comments and questions, if they were not answered today, will be delivered to our Gold Star speaker after today's program. And if you missed part of today's program, or if you just want to watch it again or share it with your friends and family, please stay tuned. We will be publishing today's webinar on MCID Washington's YouTube channel very soon. Good night and good morning. Thank you and have a wonderful week and stay safe today.